What's good, people? It's the Fantasy Sports Markets podcast on the FSM Network. Ben Heisler with you. It is, of course, our weekly visit with Derek Brown, our insider over at thequantedge.com. You can see his beautiful face on the video stream of this podcast. For audio, you're just going to have to wait just a second before we bring him in. Plenty going on at fantasysportsmarkets.com this week. Again, over $220,000 in prizes. There's also over $100,000 in prizes for college football, and we've doubled our roster bonuses for the final week of the regular baseball season. We've upped it from $16,000 a day to $32,000 a day, and there's been a bunch of overlay this week for baseball as well, so highly recommend you guys jump in for the final few games of the season. We'll also do another playoff survivor, which was really popular last year. Basically, all you do is you choose your team for the entirety of the postseason, or you can do it round by round. It is a great new way to play daily fantasy over at fantasysportsmarkets.com. If you like the podcast, please rate and review us over at Apple Podcasts, wherever you find those podcasts from. You can follow us on Twitter at Benny Heiss, at FSM Contest, and on Instagram as well at Fantasy Sports Markets. And if you like the stuff that Derek and I have been doing on the Quant Edge video series, make sure you guys are liking our YouTube page, both for the Quant Edge as well as fantasysportsmarkets.com. Last but not least, this is something new that we've introduced this week, and if you haven't seen the video floating around the Twitter sphere, you will eventually see it, hopefully. We have introduced a new Refer a Friend program over at fantasysportsmarkets.com. You have to be logged in, and then once you're logged in, you will see a little icon at the top right part of the screen that says Refer a Friend. You click it, it gives you your own personal code, and for every person that registers at Fantasy Sports Markets, they'll get $5 to try it for free, and you'll get $5 just for sending it to them as well. Up to $100. So it's a great way to get started, especially if you went maybe 0 for 2, 0 for 3 so far this football season, or maybe you already have built yourself up a nice bankroll at FSM. You can add $100 to it just for telling your friends about Fantasy Sports Markets. There's no deposit required. So go and get that $100 and start playing today at FSM. Derek Brown from the Quant Edge is back with us for our weekly slate breakdown. What's going on, dude?
Dude, it is week 4, and it is time to go. I can't believe it. I feel like we wait so long. This is flying through it, Benny. I mean, we are 25% after this week through the regular season. That's not even counting the fantasy season. Whew.
I don't like it, man. Like, I don't like the fact that it's flying by this fast. I've been having too good of a time, especially last week. Last week was a good week for both of us, and a lot of our plays hit. It was sort of a week that, a lot of the cash game plays I thought were really effective. And also, like, it was nice because, week 2, the process for going through it worked, but, there was just some more fluky plays. Week 3, it was like, okay, everything that we've talked about, like, you're starting to see it unfold a little bit.
Yeah, I think we're seeing more trends. I think you're seeing, as far as DFS-wise, some of these teams that you could just keep targeting and just keep beating up on with certain positions. These things are starting to flesh themselves out, and the longer we get into the season, the sharper those edges get, and you can just target teams and just keep hammering it.
Yes, please keep hammering it, and please keep playing because it's going to be working out. Let's get through the slate. We got a lot of intriguing games. Also, it's the first week with some buys going on, so we will get through the slate starting with Carolina and Houston. Right now, the total has gone up from 46 to 47.5. In this one, and it's currently Houston at -4. The line opened up at -5. Good opening week for Kyle Allen. Granted, he had the perfect opportunity and matchup to do so going up against Arizona. The Panthers needed a win in a desperate way, and this is something that I learned from Scott Van Pelt on his one big thing. When everybody was talking about Daniel Jones and the massive week that he had, not enough people really discussed the play of Kyle Allen, and this is also somebody that was like a 5-star recruit heading to Texas A&M, didn't really work out there, and eventually got himself on the Panthers, didn't get drafted, but brought over, and now he's had 2 really good games, and really importantly too, Christian McCaffrey got back involved, and he was looking Curtis Samuel's way as well.
Yeah, I mean, I like this game a lot, and I think this is one of those games that could kind of go overlooked a little bit. I mean, I think that people will rush to probably pay Kyle Allen, whether it's box score chasing or not. Like you said, Allen had a great matchup last week, but with Carolina, there's still, a decent matchup on both sides for these quarterbacks. I mean, you have Carolina taking on Houston, who got ripped apart by Keenan Allen. So in the slot, DJ Moore can do the same thing this week.
Yeah, I'm with you there.
Yeah, I mean, Christian McCaffrey's going to get fed, so he's always in play as long as the guy is playing 100% of the snaps. So whatever Rivera says, like he's not going to play, That has not come to fruition. It will not happen. So you got to love McCaffrey in this spot. I think that this spot, I mean, look, the over-under is set at 47. This could easily go over here,
I'm with
Benny.
you.
Yeah, and so I like DJ Moore a whole lot running out of the slot versus Houston. I love the Texans side, especially, look, if you look at the other side of this, yes, Hopkins is in play. I don't have to tell you any stats to tell you that he is #good. But what I do think we need to talk about very quickly is the fact that Kenny Stills kind of took over this slot role.
Yes, he has.
He split it with Kiki Kuti last week. He ran more routes out of the slot than Kuti did. And if you have him going against Javian Elliott in the slot for the Panthers, whew, give me all that action. After Stills saw 6 targets, 89 yards, he could be one of those plays, especially in tournaments, that people shy away. They don't, because they want to. They go to Hopkins, and then the next sexy name that people try to wedge in is they're like, you got to go to Will Fuller. That's where we got to go. Nah, man, it's Kenny Stills that people need to be if they're looking to stack this game on either side, Stills has to be part of those builds.
I think that's perfectly fair. Having said that, I do think that breakout game for Will Fuller is very close. He's had 7 targets. Yeah. He's had 7 targets in his last 2 games. Just went over 100 yards, averaging just only about 10 yards per reception. That's too low. And so I think at some point things are going to have to open up for him. The problem is that right now the running game isn't effective at all. They're not using Duke Johnson in the way that a lot of us had hoped, considering that they brought him in for a 4th conditional 5th-round pick. Carlos Hyde isn't good. The idea that they continue to run him into the ground, I think he averaged less than 2 yards a carry last week, is really disappointing. So I'm expecting, hopefully, at some point they'll figure out how to use Duke Johnson because they brought him in. They traded a pretty high draft pick for a backup running back at this point. That doesn't seem to make a whole lot of sense to me. So maybe he's worth a dart throw in tournaments, probably not on a site like Fantasy Sports Markets, but I do think at some point Watson is going to realize the benefit of dumping it off to the running back who can catch and help extend some plays so he doesn't have to do everything on his own. Let's go to Cleveland and Baltimore. The line has moved down from 46 down to 45, and the Ravens have moved up from -6 to -7, so a full touchdown favorite at home. Despite the Ravens coming off a loss on the road at Arrowhead. Meanwhile, the Browns are 1-2, coming off another tough loss and just some terrible play calling by Freddie Kitchens. They have a great play caller in their offensive coordinator in Todd Monken, and Freddie Kitchens is refusing to give up play calling duties. We'll see if that continues over the course of the year. And as far as opportunities for Baker and for Odell Beckham to really start to get themselves going, it doesn't feel like this is the week for that to happen.
Yeah, I don't. This feels like one of those games where, look, like if you're going to target anybody in this game, OBJ is always in play. I mean, there's not a cornerback that you could definitively say in the league that could shut him down at any time. And look, if Jimmy Smith plays or if he doesn't play, Marlon Humphrey is amazing. He is such a good cornerback. If you go over and you look at the splits, like with the injury tool with the Quant Edge, and look at compare Jimmy Smith and Marlon Humphrey, this pass defense for the Ravens is markedly better when Humphrey's on the field. Sure. But if Smith is out again, these cornerbacks are flip-flopping around and stuff like that. Carr is going to stay in the slot. I don't want any part of Jarvis Landry. It doesn't matter who the hell they're playing. I mean, he's basically dead to me. But as far as the Browns side, yeah, I agree with you. I think this is another week we see Baker struggle. They have him taking 5-step drops. He's holding the ball. They're running these deep routes. I saw a video on Twitter was talking about it. Was I think it was Warren Sharp. It was 3rd and 8 or 3rd and short, and you have guys running go routes down the damn field. What are you doing, baby? What is this? Come on. This offensive line is not good. And the Ravens are going to heat it up. They're going to put the pressure on Baker in this one. I think if you look at any side of this game, you like the Baltimore side in this one. Ingram, with that huge game last week, is definitely in play. Lamar Jackson, as long as he's got cleats on, hell, even if he goes shoeless, he's always got to be in consideration for your lineups. I don't think that this is a smash spot. I think this could be a little bit slower paced game than what we're expecting and a little bit more low scoring. Marquise Brown is a nice tournament option this week because people are going to be box score chasing and they're like, he didn't do anything. And they're not going to see the fact that this dude put up 217 air yards last week. He just barely missed a monster game. So as much as people want to poo-poo the play, he was a great play last week. And if people are not going to go back there this week, look, Cleveland has got some injuries. If Greedy Williams is out, if Denzel Ward is out, you have Marquise Brown running free? It's going to be huge this week. So I like the Baltimore side in this one a whole lot.
I really like the call on Hollywood Brown. I will say this from the Cleveland side, if you're looking to roster anybody for a contrarian play, somebody that's getting a ton of snaps and a ton of volume is Nick Chubb, especially after last week. Played 70 of the 72 snaps, had 23 carries for 96 yards. He also got 7 targets in the passing game, had 4 catches for 35 yards. He now has, 11 catches on the season through 3 games. I think he only had 20 catches all of last year. They're using Nick Chubb as a 3-down back. They're using him in the running game. They're incorporating him into the passing game. And I think if Cleveland believes that they can win against Baltimore, they are probably going to want to slow down tempo and incorporate more of Nick Chubb. Nobody's going to play him because of Baltimore's defense, but I think that's a really intriguing contrarian play for a 3-down back that's now getting a bunch of volume in the passing game as well. To Detroit we shall go, where the Chiefs are heading there, so good luck for the Lions. Total in this game has moved up a point from 53.5 to 54.5, and the Lions are 6.5-point underdogs at home, despite a really impressive win last week against the Eagles. Now, granted, they tried to Lions it up as best as they possibly could down the stretch of the game. We've already seen them do that twice in the first game against the Arizona Cardinals, in which they probably should have lost that game, if not for Matthew Stafford not losing that interception through the hands of one of Arizona's defenders. But in this game, again, you target as many Chiefs as you possibly can. We'll try and figure out who's going to be leading the way as far as running backs go. Last week it was Darrell Williams. As the Chiefs continue to collect as many Williams as humanly possible. Damian Williams still looking like he might be out for this week. And LaShawn McCoy, according to all reports, was pretty much gutting it out. Was surprised, though, they didn't incorporate Darwin Thompson, but I think you have to look at him as an overthought this week. Don't really worry about him. But then on the Lions side, especially at home against the Chiefs secondary, I know that they were impressive last week against Baltimore at Arrowhead. But Golladay and Marvin Jones, both of them certainly in play. And if the Lions are going to try and control tempo and try and keep Mahomes off the field, might we go to Kerryon Johnson as a tournament play this week?
Yeah, I think Kerryon Johnson's an interesting play. The concern I have with Kerryon right now is that he's seen all of his rushing attempts in neutral or positive game scripts. So we really don't know what this Lions team is going to do when they get down. Is Kerryon going to be just fade away? We don't know, because Stafford is in the bottom of the league as far as target percentage. Because we've seen in the years past, Stafford loves Riddick. Stafford throws to running backs. That's not happening this year. They're towards the bottom of the league in target percentage to the running back position. So I have a lot of concerns if Kerryon could be game scripted out of this, and just because we have not seen it yet, Ben. Even though the Chiefs are, you could run on the Chiefs. They are giving up the most yards per carry to opposing running backs out of every team in the NFL. So it's definitely in play. And you with this game, you either tell yourself one or two narratives on the Lions side. They're going to try to run the ball, like you're saying, to keep it out of the Chiefs' hands, which is definitively in play. Hell, what we saw from the Ravens and what they did with Mark Ingram, the Lions could say, all right, let's wash, rinse, repeat, and let's feed Kerryon. But Kerryon's usage has been kind of concerning, too. I've seen some next-gen stats pictures about how they're using him, and it looks very similar to some Mike McCoy action. Just run him up the gut. Run him up the gut. Oh, hey, here's a pitch. We want you to run it up the gut. Yeah. So I do have concerns about Kerryon in this matchup. I think Kenny Golladay and Marvin Jones are definitively in play because, look, Breland on the outside can't stop a cold. Okay, I know that the Chiefs are top 10 in pass DVOA. I get that. But to say that Kenny Golladay cannot run past Breland is it's giving him a whole lot of credence and a lot of praise that he does not deserve. So I like both the wide receivers on this side. Patrick Mahomes is always in play. I mean, hell, I think that we're just waiting for the week that Patrick Mahomes does not smash. Mm-hmm. I mean, when does that happen? Because I can't see it. I faded him to a certain amount that, was he going to repeat last year's magical season? I don't know what else to say. If the guy's a stud, you really can't get away. He has to be part of your builds. I don't care if you run him naked. He has to be part of what you begin to do, especially playing Superflex over at FSM. Yeah. He's got to be part of it. You eat the chalk with that. If people are going to play him, it doesn't matter. You differentiate your lineups in other different ways outside of Patrick Mahomes, but you start with your builds with saying, okay, Patty Mahomes, click, and you move on. So As far as the wide receivers, I mean, look, Mecole Hardman's definitively in play. So's Robinson. It's a question of where's the ball going to go. The guy that I think that you have to jam in if you're playing Patty Mahomes is Sammy Watkins. He's not putting up the box score numbers in the last 2 games, but he's still getting the target volume. Not last week, the week before, he still got 13 targets. He's definitively in play. I'm not worried about Darius Slay, who in man coverage can be beat. We've seen Watkins be able to defeat press, zone, man. He can do it, and he's showing right now he looks healthy, as we've seen it like more so in years past. So I think if you want Mahomes, you got to have Watkins this week.
I agree.
Travis Kelce is always in play to go off any single week. Now, what the Lions did versus Ertz last week is they put 2 guys on him. Do they do that versus Kelce this week? I mean, if you tell yourself the narrative that, look, if they did it to Ertz, why the hell would they not do it to Kelce? You do have to, I mean, you do worry about that.
Really quickly, I don't think they can, because it's not like the Eagles last week had all of their weapons available. I think it was advantageous to them because of the injury situation. With the Chiefs, if they double bracket Kelce, Mahomes is going to find the open target regardless.
No, and that's definitively fair. I think it comes down to not only what we think, but what does Patricia think about his cornerbacks? Does he truly trust them on an island versus these wide receivers? Because how much is the talent of these wide receivers versus how much is the scheme of Reed? You know, not saying with Sammy Watkins, but Robinson and Mecole Hardman. Yeah, I mean, they've had good games, but how much does Patricia trust his cornerbacks to win those matchups on the outside? So I think that, look, you never can fade Travis Kelce. That is a definitive, honest-to-God truth. And if you believe Mahomes goes for 3 or 4 touchdowns, the fact that Kelce's going to come down with at least one of those is probably 9 times out of 10 going to be true.
I'm going to give you one name, and it's purely sort of a narrative street idea. I'm thinking about the Chiefs' loss last year in the AFC Championship game to the Patriots. And part of the reason, especially on that final drive in overtime, was that they couldn't defend anything underneath. Danny Amendola might be a really intriguing play as a guy that nobody's going to be on, especially after the last 2 weeks. But week 1, 13 targets, 7 catches for 104 yards and a touchdown. Granted, it was against Arizona's defense, who is worse than Kansas City. And we know that Matthew Stafford, you even wrote about this in your 10 stats article, I think either a week or 2 weeks ago, about Matthew Stafford taking the most deep shots that he ever has in the entirety of his career. So if those deep shots aren't working early, I think Amendola could be in line for a potentially big game as well. Again, they're going to have to throw to keep up with Kansas City, and maybe that's a way to move the sticks forward just a tad. But if you really don't want to get on Galladay or Marvin Jones in this matchup, maybe Amendola with 0 ownership might be a differentiating way to go. Let's move on. You got the Raiders going to Indianapolis to take on the Colts. Total has gone up about a point in this game from 44.5 to 45.5, and the Colts are 7-point favorites at home against the Raiders. Let's talk about Jacoby Brissett for a second, because I think he's been really impressive so far this year. Got us for multiple touchdowns in every game, has taken care of the football as well, and now has a really intriguing matchup, especially against an Oakland team that after that Week 1 win against Denver, I think a lot of us were really impressed by them. But the reality is that Denver's not a very good team. And then after that, they've had a good first quarter against the Chiefs and really did not look good at all against the Minnesota Vikings. So are we looking to get as many Colts in as possible, and especially with T.Y. Hilton potentially dealing with a nagging injury, are you looking at this as a really good opportunity for Marlon Mack?
I think both the running backs are very interesting in this situation. You have both of these teams have top 10, right as we're recording this, have top 10 run blocking offensive lines. And if T.Y. Hilton is out of this game, the Raiders have been torched by wide receivers. If T.Y. Hilton's out of this, I think you could see a very run-heavy approach on both sides of the ball. And both of these run defenses, you can run on these teams. So I like Josh Jacobs, especially with Gruden coming out being like, look, we got to get this guy going. We got to use him in the pass game more. I think this game projects as more of a game that the Raiders could possibly, if they want to feed Jacobs, they could keep this game close. And so I like Jacobs in this spot because nobody's going to rush to play him. Marlon Mack, I love this year. I know I sound like a broken record, Benny. I know it, and I get it, okay? But even in a game last week where Mack came into it, he's got the calf injury. It's like, okay, does he play? Does he not? We're waiting for news coming out Sunday, and then he gets 16 touches. He has above 70 yards again. You know he's getting the red zone work. And last year we saw Marlon Mack put up 149 total yards, 2 touchdowns versus the Raiders. Dude, this could be one of those games where you just jam in both running backs. They both go off, and you don't want any part of it outside of that, except for possibly Darren Waller in this.
Yeah.
And I love Waller. He's getting, in 2 of the 3 games, above a 30% target share. We've talked we've talked crazy amounts about how you target tight ends versus the Colts. Their zone scheme just bleats out points to opposing tight ends. We saw Austin Hooper have 66 yards and 2 touchdowns last week for them, and nobody wanted to play him. Now, Waller's different in the fact that he's coming off a smash spot, but I think Derek Carr goes back to him this week, and we see him have a huge game. If T.Y. Hilton's out, I think if you want to get contrarian, if you're playing larger fields and stuff, the tight ends for the Colts could be a good spot to sit here and target, because the Raiders are outside in the last 2 years. It's not just this year. This year and last year, they are 30th or worse in DVOA versus the tight end position. Now, I know that it's like, who do you pick? Who do you pick your poison? Is it Doyle? Is it Ebron? Oh my gosh, Mo Alley Cox is in the mix too. But you go with the talent, you go with the upside. I think that Ebron's probably the play in this spot if you're looking to get one of those tight ends. But I'm not going to say, look, if T.Y. Hilton's out, we could see multiple touchdowns to the tight end position for the Colts this week.
That's a really intriguing call. As far as Darren Waller is concerned, he has 7, 6, and 13 receptions on 8, 7, and 14 targets. Had 13 catches for 134 yards last week on the road against a really good defense in Minnesota. So Darren Waller, and by the way, I'm sure there were a few other people that had him on a high list before Hard Knocks came out, but the guy that I remember that had been touting Darren Waller since before I can remember was Matthew Berry. So kudos to Berry for making that call on Darren Waller, and certainly that's looking pretty good for him. Let's move on to South Beach, where you have the Los Angeles Chargers going to Miami to take on the pathetic Dolphins. The Fins are currently 15-point underdogs at home, but at least that line has moved in their favor. It initially opened at 16.5, and the total has gone down about a point in this game from 44.5 down to 43.5. I think we can all agree, at least from the Dolphins side, that Josh Rosen helped them stay fairly competitive in the first half against Dallas last week, and that's basically where things stood. He had a bunch of drops from his wide receivers. Although Preston Williams is seeing a lot of targets now in this offense, and if you're going to use anybody on the Miami side, he might be the guy. He had 12 targets last week, had a touchdown in his first game, played 69 of 72 snaps. So this isn't the matchup to necessarily run it back with somebody from Miami against the Chargers, even though we believe that LA is going to put up a ton of points. But it's hard not to love Rivers in this matchup. It's certainly hard not to love Austin Eckler. Justin Jackson, I even think, is in play too, considering what backup running backs have done against Miami the last few weeks as well. The Tony Pollard game last week. And then Keenan Allen. The target share right now for Keenan Allen is just beyond absurd. He's averaging 14 yards per reception. He's getting targeted in the red zone. He has 10, 15, and 17 targets, Debro, in the first 3 games of the season. Keenan Allen has to be in every single cash lineup you make, period. If you don't do it, you're a donkey.
Yeah, look, you're not going to hear any disagreement out of me. Like, Keenan Allen, his floor and his ceiling are just immense. And people want to sit here and be like, well, is this the how long do you ride this train? This is not the week to get off of it.
Correct.
No way, shape, form, or fashion. Going against the Dolphins, people are like, because you keep hearing all these narratives, like for teams that play the Jets, teams that play the Dolphins, and they're like, but what if they blow them out? Are they going to stop? Are they going to... Like, look, if you go look at what the Chargers are doing to get... First of all, let's just take that out of commission. And the fact that if they get to blow them out, how do you think they got to that spot? They have to put up the points to blow them out. So they have to put up the points to get to the spot. Do you think Keenan Allen's not going to be any part of that to sit here and be like, oh, well, is he not going to get fed volume? How did they get to 30 points to begin with? He's going to be in there. He's going to eat, Benny. It's going to happen. He's getting above a 30% target share. Plus, if you look at how the Chargers are doing it, when they are in positive game scripts, they are the most pass-heavy team in the league. Give me all the Rivers. Give me all the Keenan Allen in this week. I like Eckler. We saw him disappear last week when they got down. And we see Justin Jackson's snap percentage. His touches are slowly creeping up. Now, is this the week where they say, okay, Melvin Gordon's coming back. Let's feed some Eckler. Let's sit here and just drive home the narrative that, look, Melvin Gordon, we're not paying you because Austin Eckler can do it too. So I like Eckler in this spot. I think that you could even tell yourself a story of where you play, like we're talking about. You saw what Pollard did. You saw what Zeke did. You could sit there and tell yourself, if you want to get really cute in large fields, where you play both Eckler and Justin Jackson.
I'm glad you brought that up.
People are going to say that I'm insane by saying that.
I buy it.
It can happen. And I think Justin Jackson, this could be the week that he explodes and has like 2 touchdowns. And it's just basically like, look, like Al Seidenfeld always says, you play all the dudes. This is one of the weeks where you play all the dudes. You get in your Chargers, you get in your Rivers, you get in your Allen, you run it with Eckler and Jackson, and you log out. You don't worry about no damn Dolphins. I understand where you're coming from with Preston Williams. He's getting the target volume. But anybody that has seen, everybody wants to jump on, well, Preston Williams is getting the volume, Devontae Parker's getting the air yards. What are they doing with it? Like, neither one of them. What are they doing with all of this volume and air yards? Nothing. Nada. Go other places. Be different. If you're going to stack the Chargers side, find other spots, especially on FSM. You can do that. You don't have to worry about salaries.
That's right.
You play who the hell you want. You play the team that is going to smash and grab, and then you play other guys from other games and stack all the cash. That's what you do.
I feel like I touched a nerve with you. You good?
Yeah, I'm good, man. I'm so sick and tired of people. I keep hearing all the crap about they play these garbage JV high school teams in the Dolphins, and people are just like, but what if the game script and dude, if they blow the damn team out,
don't overthink it.
Guys are exactly. It's being too damn cute. Play the guys that put up points. It doesn't have to be hard, Benny. It really doesn't.
Speaking of playing all the dudes, this is something that you might want to do for this next matchup. Washington is going to East Rutherford to take on the Giants. We've already seen the total go up all the way from 46.5 to 49, and the Giants, the Daniel Jones Magic, have allowed them to be favored by 2.5 against Washington at home. I guess that's not really that big of a surprise, considering that Washington just got their ass handed to them by the Bears. But they did come back in the second half against a really tough Bears defense before Case Keenum thought that he was actually on the goal line, but he wasn't, and then they forced another fumble. 5 takeaways by the Bears defense as they had their best game of the season. Everybody's in play, right? Daniel Jones, fantastic matchup against Washington. No Saquon Barkley, so Wayne Gallman steps in. And there's some reports, too, that we might see a little bit more Daniel Jones running as opposed to incorporating Wayne Gallman into the mix. But we just know that there's nobody behind him, so he's going to get volume. I think the 15 to 20 touches for Gallman are certainly in play. Whether you think he does anything with it or not remains to be seen. But all the pass catchers in this game, certainly you love Terry McLaurin. F1, fire him up. It's the perfect nickname for him. Had another great game against a really impressive Bears defense last week. Sterling Shepard once again in play. Evan Ingram is an absolute beast. I think you absolutely need to have some exposure to this game in the form of one of these wide receivers.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I'm sorry, and Ingram as well.
Yeah. Look, I love this game, Benny. I really do. And people look at the two teams playing in this one, and they might be like, this is not really that sexy. Because no matter what you do with the Giants, there's still a stink around them. When you bring up the Giants, the first knee-jerk reaction is, but people need to get over that, man. Daniel Jones had a great game last week. He's set up to have another amazing game in this one.
I think he's a good fit in their offense, Derek. Like I think they drafted him knowing that Pat Shurmur's offense, where you get the ball out quick, use the intermediate part of the field, and make sure that they're accurate, and also like be able to extend plays a little bit. These are all things Daniel Jones can do. So I like the fit for him in this offense, especially with a lot of these really good possession receivers he has.
Well, I love it just in the fact that the one thing that we never kind of put in the range of outcomes for Daniel Jones, considering what he did in college,
right,
is the ability, like we saw in the preseason that carried over last week. He is pushing the ball down the field and taking shots. And when DFS That's what you want, baby. You want the guy that's going to rock and fire and just shoot it down the field. So I love Sterling Shepard in this one. I'm not worried about Shepard. He's going to be hidden in the slot. He's not going to see Norman, which Norman's a ghost and dust anyway. I don't care that he got an interception last week because the pass that he intercepted was god-awful. Allen Robinson was open in the end zone, and all Trubisky had to do was throw it over the head of a guy, and there's a touchdown, and Norman is not running up and down the field because he caught an interception. So I'm not scared of Norman. I like Shepard. I love Evan Ingram in this one, who is their wide receiver one there. Yes. He's the unquestioned wide receiver one. How many times do we need to see this dude put up double-digit targets and 100 yards and a touchdown before people are jamming him in to their lineups? Love him. And your call about Wayne Gallman. So here's my thing about that. The Giants have the number one run-blocking line in the NFL right now. Wayne Gallman does not have to be special. We all talk about RBs don't matter. Then if you believe that the rest of the offense around him, the offensive line around him, is top-notch, top shelf, they're going to open up just wide lanes that a bus could drive through. Versus the Redskins, who are bottom of the league versus the run, I think Gallman's definitively in play. Nobody else is getting touches there. He's going to play in both the run and the pass game. 20 touches in both phases of the game and 2 touchdowns. Yes, I said 2 touchdowns are definitively in his range of outcomes. So if he's chalk, that's fine because I'll eat it. I'll absolutely eat it if you're looking to stack this game. And McLaren coming back, the only worry that I have about McLaren in this one, the only worry is what happens at this quarterback position is if Keenum plays, which they're talking about he's got a foot injury right now, if he doesn't play. If he does play and he comes out and he just throws another poop fest and he has like 2 or 3, he does his 2 or 3 interceptions, he's doing his best Beard Magic impression, and he gets benched at halftime and we see Haskins come in. I do think there's a little bit of concern that nobody's talking about with that. Is that going to shy me away from playing Terry McLaurin? Because even
not
if
for me, because you got the shower narrative between the two of them.
Exactly, and the other thing about it is if Haskins comes in, he's going to be chucking it deep. So am I super concerned? No, I'm not concerned, but I do think that it's a point of conversation that's kind of getting overlooked here if they do have a quarterback change. And Colt McCoy, the check down master, is practicing now.
Yes, he is.
So I guess my generalized takeaway before we move on to the next game really quickly is if you're looking to try to stack this game, don't be cute. Do not play a Washington quarterback. Just don't do it. I know that you think you're really smart and the Giants' secondary is really, really bad, but that's probably not the move to make.
I also think, you talked about Gallman. I think on the other side, Chris Thompson is always going to be a high floor guy if you're looking for somebody just to stabilize it as somebody in cash. I think he's perfectly viable as well. And then Paul Richardson in a nice game against the Bears last week as well. He found some favorable matchups, went for over 80 yards and a touchdown last week. Again, you probably don't want to get too cute because you know that where the volume is going. But it was good to see Washington look elsewhere besides McLaren last week, and Paul Richardson had himself a game, and a guy that, I don't know, maybe you and I played or so when we were going through our DFS lineups on Monday nights.
We weren't talking about that at all. Not at Ozium, but
nothing
in our DMs.
No,
we didn't. We never had at all.
Never had that conversation. No collusion there. Tennessee going to Atlanta. Total in this game is at 46 with the Falcons 4-point favorites at home. Although the implied total for them has gone down just a tad. In Tennessee, it's gone out about 0.5 point. If you played Matt Ryan last week, first half, you were throwing things. Second half, he barely had, I don't think he might have had 1 incompletion in the second half last week. He was terrific, and unfortunately they just weren't able to close it out. But once again, Matt Ryan at home against a Tennessee squad that looked good the first couple games of the season, and then Jacksonville exposed them a little bit. I think this could be another smash spot for Matt Ryan, and if you're looking to go off Julio Jones, Calvin Ridley only had 1 target last week, and I think that definitively changes next week. He said it was partially because of the zone coverage that was playing against them last week. I don't buy that. I just don't think he was getting himself open. I think this is a better situation for him this week.
Yeah, I saw the same headlines that you before we get into the full game breakdown. The whole Calvin Ridley thing. What in the actual hell? Like, I don't understand where that all gets thrown into, like, he can't get open versus zone. Was anybody watching him last year? Did anybody see what he did last year? I put a tweet out about it last year. He had a 64% catch rate, 3 of his touchdowns, and he had a 96 QBR versus zone. Yes, he's better versus man and press. The idea that he can't get open versus zone is total and absolute crap. So if people don't want to play all the Calvin Ridley this week, fine, give him to me. I will take that when he's going to see some Malcolm Butler and burn that guy back into the ground. I will take the scorched earth. Give me all those points, Benny. For the Falcons, yes, I absolutely agree. This is the spot you go right back to Matt Ryan. This Tennessee secondary can be beat. And anybody that wants to talk about Adoree Jackson, I'm not going to throw numbers at you. I'm just going to give you one simple, undeniable fact of life. Adoree Jackson cannot, will not, and can never stay with Julio Jones. That will never happen. It just, sorry. If you believe other things, I'm sorry, you need to go somewhere else. But as far as Freeman, I think he's dust. I'm not looking to play him. The run defense for the Tennessee Titans is very stout. So you stack all the pass catchers. No, I'm not looking at getting at Hooper. Hooper is super matchup dependent. When the matchup is right, you get your Hooper exposure. The matchup is not right this week. So Julio, Ridley, give me some Matt Ryan. As far as on the Tennessee side, phew.
I think you can make an argument if Delaney Walker's healthy to try and run it back with him. Target Falcons in the middle of the field, yeah.
I'd like that argument a lot more if Walker was seeing a full complement of snaps. I think he's still working his way back from injury. He was basically non-existent until the final part of the game last week, where the Titans were like, I guess they looked at the scoreboard and they're like, oh my gosh, we're down. When did this happen? And what do we do? And Delaney Walker has like all of his targets on the final 1 or 2 drives.
Yeah, he still finished with 9 targets and 7 catches for 64 yards. So yeah, like I say on that show all the time, garbage time is money time regardless.
The only way that I'm willing to sit here and probably run it back on the Tennessee side is if Derrick Henry gets fed. Now, could game script totally take him out of this one? Yes. Now, could the Titans try to limit that and beat him early and often? And considering, look, Keanu Neal is out. Okay, this defense is not just shut down versus running backs. So is a Derrick Henry, 20, 25 touches, and he just smashes and breaks a long one in this one? It's always in play. Yeah, it's always in play. And I think if you want to run this back on the other side with the Tennessee Titans, that's the play for me.
That's perfectly fair. As far as snaps for Derrick Henry, everybody thinks all the attempts are there, and he's had 19, 15, and 17. They're better than what they were last year, but by no means is this guy getting 20 rushing attempts per game, which sort of seems to be the narrative around him. So, yes, he's a contrarian play and an intriguing one against Atlanta. Normally we love to play running backs against the Falcons, but mostly pass-catching running backs, and they've improved in that area so far this year. So I don't particularly love the matchup for Henry. I think
to that point, yeah. Deion Lewis, I don't want to play. I think it's getting too cute. I think it's pushing the narrative too far to one side.
That I agree with.
As far as pass catchers, yeah. So
I was in on Miles Sanders in week 2, and that didn't necessarily go to plan as well. So with Atlanta, yes, I think it's also purely matchup dependent. But if the right matchup is there, you can absolutely smash against them. Final 1:00 game, you have the Patriots on the road against the Buffalo Bills as they continue to circle the wagons at 3-0. Total in this game has moved down from 43.5 to 42.5, and Buffalo has moved from a 7-point underdog at home to 7.5-point underdog against the vaunted New England Patriots. Offense and their defense has been terrific as well. So has Buffalo's. And I know that they kind of let Cincinnati back into the game a little bit, but they closed them out when they needed to. And their pass defense, Debro, is as good as really anybody's in the league. I don't know if they're still number 1 in DVOA against the pass, but they were to start off the season, and they've looked really, really good. It might actually be New England now. I'd have to double check. But as far as this game goes, Sony Michel's gotten 2 early touchdowns, and you can run on Buffalo, but I just don't like that backfield right now. James White's going to be returning. I'm intrigued by Rex Burkhead's usage because he led the entire team in snaps at the running back spot last week, and maybe if you're looking for a guy to sort of help salvage your running back situation, it seems like they want to go back to Burkhead and give him some volume and opportunities in both the running game and the passing game. But is there anybody on either side that you're intrigued by this week? It's a low total and 2 really good defenses, and frankly, I don't know if there's anything that I want to do with it.
I think I'm skipping over this game. I don't want any part of this game. I think both these defenses are top shelf. I mean, all of the corners for New England are absolutely amazing. Could you tell yourself a narrative John Brown getting put in the slot versus New England slot corner, and that's about the only weak, like, and I say weak, but the only kind of just, I mean, matchup spot for them? Sure. Is it a spot I'm willing to go to? No. I just don't. I don't like this game, Benny. If you look at Tom Brady's history just quickly versus, because people are going to be like, well, Brady and Josh Gordon and Edelman if he plays and all those kind of things. It's all great and grand. In the last 29 games the Bills have played, the last person to throw for 300 yards was Tom Brady. Now, in his last 4 games against the Bills, he's averaging 233 passing yards. He has three total touchdowns and 4 interceptions. Those are nasty numbers. Both these defenses are absolutely legit. They're both in play for DFS purposes. But as far as like the skill players in this one, I don't want anything to do with it. I think this game you skip over and you look for other stuff.
Yeah, I think the Patriots defense is certainly in play against Josh Allen, who is turnover prone. He's had a terrific start to the season, and the rushing floor continues to be there for him. But could I absolutely see Josh Allen turning the ball over 3 times or so, maybe getting a forced fumble out of him? Absolutely. I think the Patriots going in, and listen, Buffalo's a good team. Buffalo's going to be a playoff team this year, but they're just not at the same level. They're not at the same table as New England right now, and especially with the turnover prone young quarterback. I think this is an ideal spot to play the Patriots defense, especially on a site like Fantasy Sports Markets. To the afternoon slate we shall go, where the Seattle Seahawks are traveling to Arizona. Oh, giddy for them. The total in this game goes from 47 to 48, and the Seahawks have moved from -4 to -5 on the road. The first 2 games of the season, Arizona was in it. They actually hung tough against Baltimore. Wasn't really the case last week against Carolina, and I have a hard time envisioning this is going to be the same situation against Seattle, but the Seahawks tend to be very Jekyll and Hyde, and I think a lot of people were really surprised by the fact that they just could not handle everything that New Orleans threw that way. Alvin Kamara ran wild. Are we looking at Seattle in this spot saying maybe they're overlooking Arizona and maybe there's some Cardinals that are worth playing here because it's a decent total. The Seahawks defense has not been particularly impressive, and we've had to see Russell Wilson throw the ball more than we typically anticipated this year, and Rashad Penny's dealing with an injury. Chris Carson, we're not sure if he's going to hang on to the football. Like, there's a lot of really intriguing storylines here that could put a lot of these guys at play.
I love this game. And I love both sides of the ball on this one. With Russell Wilson, you worried about, like, last year, it's like, okay, where's the ceiling? Whew! The ceiling is back, baby. It is back big time for Russell Wilson. I mean, just what we've seen in these 3 weeks. Russell Wilson's last 19 games, he has thrown for 300 yards 3 times. That has happened twice this season out of his 3 games. So I like Russell Wilson in this spot. I think this is a spot people still have all of the worries and what does Seattle do? I don't want any part of Chris Carson. I get it if Penny is out. But they have shown if he sticks the ball on the turf, it's going to happen that he is taken out and they run pro slice. They run other running backs. So I understand people wanting to play Carson and they go back to him. I was not on playing him last week, and I'm not going to play him this week. I don't want to worry with it. I want to know who gets the ball, who's not going to put the ball on the turf, who's going to get the ball in the red zone. And yes, you could say Chris Carson, but if we look at his peripherals, all the analytics outside of the 2 touchdowns that he had in week 1, he has not been good this year at all. Those 2 touchdowns in week 1 saved him and saved everybody in DFS, because if he didn't have those, you were sitting there scratching your head and saying, oh, hell. And you sure as hell were not playing him in week 2. So I'm off the Chris Carson train. I love Russell Wilson in this spot. The pace in this game, Seattle is going to have to move it because Arizona is going to be moving the ball religiously. Kyler Murray is leading the league in pass attempts right now. And we've seen Seattle. I mean, look, they made Andy Dalton look like the GOAT week 1. And so can Kyler Murray light it up? And now that we've seen the rushing upside of Kyler Murray last week with 8 and 69 on the ground, I love both sides of this, Benny. I think it's easy on the Cardinals side. I think you look at Murray, you look at Fitz, you look at Kirk. Fitz has been getting all kinds of work in the red zone. I'm not as just running to play DJ because that wrist is not 100%. We've seen him not get as much work in the last 2 weeks. He is wearing a bulky wrist brace. So him getting hit the wrong way and being out of this one. So, yeah, I'm fading both the running backs on both sides for this one. Both quarterbacks are immensely in play. Tyler Lockett, anybody who wants to talk about him not getting enough volume is not looking at what's going on in Seattle right now.
That was week one only.
Yeah, absolutely. So the Tyler Lockett non-volume narrative needs to die. It needs to get buried, and people revisit that in a few years. So the other intriguing play, and I think he's going to be chalk on a lot of different sites, is Will Dissly. The Arizona Cardinals have been absolutely atrocious.
Yeah, it's the flow chart. It's the flow chart against them.
I mean, it's a turnstile. You plug in and play tight ends versus two different defenses. It's the Colts and it's the Cardinals, and you log out, and that's what you do every single week. So yeah, I love this game.
Yeah, I do too. And again, I'm a little bit higher on DJ than you are because I like the pass catching targets that he's getting. He had 9 last week. Didn't do a whole heck of a lot with it, but still caught a touchdown. If they're going to throw to David Johnson 9 times and still give him upwards of 10 to 15 carries, that's really exciting against the Seattle team that you can run and throw against. So I might have some exposure to him. Maybe I'll incorporate him into a Beat Benny Heist lineup over on Fantasy Sports Markets. But he's probably not a cash game play for me, but certainly an intriguing tournament play in a game that you're going to want to have exposure to both sides. To the Rams we go in LA, where they are hosting the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Total in this game has moved down from 50.5 to 49.5. And the Rams have moved down from 10.5 point favorites to 9. So we've already seen some money come in on Tampa. And I don't know whether that's just they thought the line was too big for the Rams or whether Jared Goff is starting to regress again this year. It's a bizarre matchup, and I'm not really sure where I want to go other than the fact that you know that Mike Evans can blow up each and every week. It's just a tough matchup this week against somebody like Talib in the outside corners. He can go ahead and beat him, but I think the Rams are going to be smart enough to try and figure out ways to take Mike Evans away and not have the type of game that he had last week where he broke the slate. Cooper Kupp right now is playing like a wide receiver 1. He's getting upwards of 10, 11 targets a game. Brandon Cooks the last 2 weeks has really been good. I think if there's one play that not a lot of people might be on in this game, and this is somebody that saw upwards of like 8 to 10 targets for almost every game last year, and really just hasn't seen the volume and the consistency this year, is Robert Woods. Is he somebody that you like against Tampa, knowing that they're going to try and do whatever they can to slow down Kupp and Cooks?
I'm not really looking to play Woods this week. I think Hargraves, we need to understand something about this. So the Tampa Bay defense is not just this absolute pushover that they have been. Bowles has this defense playing well, and I do not want to play Todd Gurley in this spot. They are an upper echelon, top 5 run defense this year.
They've been very good against the run.
Nobody has been putting up the points on the ground versus them. Todd Gurley, we know, has not gotten any targets this year. So we're talking about this Tampa defense. Hargraves is playing very good on the outside. I imagine him to either see mostly Robert Woods. He'll probably see some Cooks in this one. Cooks, I think you can tell yourself, the splits with him and Goff at home versus on the road are massive. And I don't think that, I'm willing to fade Woods in this one because Hargraves is playing good. And it's not like Cooks is a burner, man. Hargraves cannot stay with him. If he gets him on the outside, I think Cooks can pass him. Cooper Kupp is going to see MJ Stewart in the slot, who is absolutely atrocious. So I like Cooks. I like Kupp on the Rams side. Goff at home is definitively in play because, like I said, they're not going to be able to run the ball at all. On the Tampa side, man, I know Jameis Winston had a good game last week. You could chalk that up to the Giants. I do not want to play Mike Evans this week. I think Aqib Talib has shown that he is still shut down. He is still elite. I don't want to risk that matchup, especially over at FSM where you can play whoever the hell you want to. It's not going to be Mike Evans for me this week, although I do like Chris Godwin in this matchup. If there is a Rams corner that you consider and try to pick on at least a little bit, that is Nickel Roby-Coleman in the slot. And so I think Chris Godwin could definitively – I think that – look – for a Bucs team that we all talked about, okay, the defense is not going to be great, Jameis Winston's going to have volume. We haven't seen Winston support than more than one guy per week. Okay? Last week, it was Mike Evans, 15 targets, and he 8. The week before that, it was Chris Godwin. And I think this is a Chris Godwin game. I think that Winston is at a point where he can only support one, maybe another guy inks in there on the side and has a decent game. I think this is one of those games where Chris Godwin goes for 100 and a touchdown.
I like him to bounce back. We'll see whether or not the hip injury is any concern. I think he missed practice on Wednesday, so we'll see what his status is coming up to this game. But I'm with you. I think in the middle of the field, especially if Bruce Arians says, look, like if you're not connecting with Evans, you know Godwin is always going to be there for you. So I'm with you there. I think he's an excellent play. A game that we probably don't want to have anything to do with anybody on either side. You have Jacksonville and Denver. The Broncos, despite being 0-3, are 3.5-point favorites at home against Jacksonville. We'll see whether or not Jalen Ramsey plays. He's missed all week, was sick, and then had the birth of his second child. Total in this game has moved up from an impressive 37.5 to 38. I mean, other than maybe Fournette, just because the volume is there, and ownership continues to move further and further away from him, and he's getting pass-catching opportunities as well. I certainly probably Emmanuel Sanders. I guess maybe Emmanuel Sanders you could have some exposure to if Ramsey isn't there and Boye is still hurt. But is there anybody that you want to target in this game? Otherwise, we can just move on.
I think Fournette's in play only because the volume, although do I think this is the week that we see him break out? No. But the whole rando call that I'm going to give you this one, Benny, and oh my gosh, if this happens, I went there last week, I'm going back there this week. Is Bryce Callahan is dealing with a foot injury. He is probably going to be out in this one. So the absolute turnstile of Isaac Yiadom is going to be on the outside. He's going to face, and I think Chris Harris matches up with DJ Chark. I think if anybody they look to play in this game, people are going to be like, oh, it's got to be Chark. He's been doing great. My call for this game that I'm going to have exposure to in large field tournaments is Chris Conley. I really like him in this game. MVS has 4.3 speed. You know who else has 4.3 speed, Benny? Chris Conley. He can absolutely burn Yiadom on the outside. We've seen Minshew take deep shots and not afraid to do so. I think if Chris Harris is on Chark this week, I think Chris Conley is going to have a nice game and we could see some deep shots. That's my rando call for the week, and I'm totally sticking with it. I will post pictures of me putting him in the lineups. He's going in my Millie lineup right now. I'm telling you, man.
Okay, very good. Chris Conley potentially in play. And there's still some crazy numbers about the Broncos. I think they've only lost, it's in single-digit games over the last maybe 15, 20 years in the month of September at home. So it's understandable why the betting public has started to go back to them. They've been pretty much in every game for a while. And I do think this is a good matchup for them to bounce back. We'll see, though. Conley in play. Oh, that's really interesting. All right, I might start to look at that a little bit more. Another game with a very low total between two elite-level defenses. You have the Bears hosting the Minnesota Vikings. Bears currently 2.5-point favorites at home, with the total sticking right at 38. I'm curious to get your perspective on Dalvin Cook because he's been your guy all season long. He's been your go-to, your lock button in all your cash game lineups. Is he in play once again against Chicago? Because they've given up, I think, no more than 60 yards on the ground, have not given up a rushing touchdown this year. They're at home. The Vikings over the last few years have struggled at Soldier Field, but you just know that that's the only way that they're going to be able to have some success against this Bears defense through Dalvin Cook. So what do you do here? You have two competing forces at nature here.
Dude, I think Dalvin Cook makes a great contrarian play in tournaments. We know that he's going to get fed the ball. He's going to get the rock, Benny. It's going to happen. The Vikings are fielding a top 10 run blocking offensive line this year. And people were talking about, like last week, they were like, but the Raiders are good versus the run. I mean, the numbers say so. Yes, the Bears are very good.
Whose voice is that? That's an excellent impression of somebody.
I don't know, man. You figure it out. At me on Twitter about who the hell I just channeled. But,
that was great.
Dude, So Akeem Hicks left last week's game. Right now, it looks like he's going to play. If he's out, that helps the case for Dalvin Cook. My thing with Dalvin Cook is Minnesota is tried and true. They want to be Seattle this year. If they are allowed to run the ball and they can keep the Bears' offense off the field, they are going to do so. So Dalvin Cook, 20 to 25 touches, is still absolutely in play. If not more so in this game, we've seen Dalvin Cook break long runs. If he gets in the open field, him busting a 60-yard run in this one is definitively in play. And if nobody plays him and he's at low ownership just because he's playing the Bears, that's the time where you stack the cash, baby. So I love Dalvin Cook. I think he's a great contrarian play in tournaments. If you want to do anybody else on the Vikings side, the only person you could possibly talk yourself into is Adam Thielen. faces a buster screen in the slot. Is that a spot that I'm going to go? Probably not, because Thielen's probably only going to see 5 targets at this, because I think Cook gets fed.
And screens has been considerably better with the Bears defense this year.
That's fair. I mean, I think it's more of a no team has tried to sit here and pick on him yet, than him being just a vastly improved player.
No, I think the system around him has helped hide a lot of his weaknesses.
Yeah, no. To your point, that's definitively true. On the Bears side, I don't really want any part of it, man. I'll be honest with you. I think Montgomery gets a lot of the work in this one, but man, the way the Bears are playing right now, I think Trubisky having 4 interceptions and the Bears offense just having a rough go of this one with Allen Robinson versus Rhodes is definitively in play. So I really don't want any of the Bears side.
As far as Trubisky goes, he did have a nice game last week, the 3 touchdowns. He still has a positive.
He can thank the Redskins for that. He needs to send them a care package.
Yes, absolutely. And the thing about Trubisky too, before we move on, and we don't have to spend a lot of time because it's Mitchell fucking Trubisky.
Did we hit a nerve? You talk about my nerves. Did we hit a nerve with this one?
There's been plenty of nerves against Mitch Trubisky. Although I did say that he would have a good game against Washington.
I felt the emotion here. God.
He's not running anymore. And that's definitively frustrating, because that was part of the reason why weeks 4 through 10 last year, he averaged more fantasy points per game than Patrick freaking Mahomes. Like, if he runs, he had like 27 carries for like 256 yards and a handful of touchdowns through the ground last year. I don't know why, whether it's because of the shoulder injury he suffered last year and now all of a sudden it's in his head not to run, or Matt Nagy and Mark Helfrich have basically said, don't run or you can move around the pocket, but that's it. No more than 3 carries so far for Trubisky this year. He's a terrific athlete. And he actually is better when he's on the move. So I don't understand that. Maybe it opens up a little bit against Minnesota. I hope that he starts to run a little bit more, because it just makes all the sense in the world. Also, if you want a little fun dart throw, Cordero Patterson revenge game against Minnesota.
Oh, good gosh. Narrative Street, baby. That's where we're at.
Let's take a stroll. All right, so there's the main slate. Really quickly before we wrap things up, let's give a couple quick thoughts on the Sunday night matchup. Your Saints are hosting the Cowboys. Total in that game is 45.5, now to 47. And the Saints are 2.5-point home dogs. Can't remember the last time in the last few years that the Saints have been a home dog at home, but certainly with how Dallas has played this year, it's warranted. I think that this is an opportunity for them to unleash Kamara. Once again, you saw how he was used against Seattle on the road. That was a game nobody thought that they could win as well. And then with Bridgewater, just throwing the ball 15-plus times to Michael Thomas in the middle of the field. I love a lot of the Saints in this game just because I think the usage will be there. I know Dallas's offense has been terrific and their defense has improved, but I'm not shying away from New Orleans, especially at home.
Yeah, I love the Dallas side in this one. And as much of a Saints homer as I am, I hate to even say that because, dear God, I live in cowboy country and I'm never going to hear the end of that shit. But, look, Dak has been tossing the rock and he's been so damn beautiful doing it this year. I mean, the guy's had 30 more passing attempts in every single game, and that's definitively in play here. You got to love Amari Cooper, and I know people are talking about Marshawn Lattimore. He's been good in recent seasons, and this is not the season, though, man. He has been getting burnt religiously. It is happening. Cooper's playing more on the outside. I think he sees Lattimore. I think he has a good game in this one. I do think this is an interesting spot for Randall Cobb versus P.J. Williams in the slot. So I like the Dallas side on this one. As far as the Saints go, Kamara's going to get fed. It's absolutely in play, and I think he has a great game in this one because they're going to set up a lot of easy screens for Teddy B. I don't want Michael Thomas in this one. I think he gets some volume, but the ceiling's gone. While Bridgewater's there, his ceiling's absolutely dust. He doesn't have a ceiling. Is he a nice floor play because of the volume? Sure, but I think Kamara is the only Saint that I would be looking to get in this week.
Perfectly fair. And then finally, you have the Bengals against the Steelers on Monday night. Total in that game only 43.5, and the Steelers, despite being 0-3, are 3.5-point favorites at home, although that line has moved from 4.5 down to 3.5. Is this a bounce back spot for Pittsburgh? A lot of people love James Conner after the first 3 weeks to really start to get things going. They moved Juju Smith-Schuster into the slot. He had a long touchdown. As for Cincinnati, they're going to throw, and I think Pittsburgh has an opportunity to, especially on the defensive side, to really step up this week and maybe force a few turnovers. So I think Pittsburgh's defense on a season-long league is back in play again this week.
Oh, yeah. I love Pittsburgh's defense in this spot. At home versus the Bengals, who've been giving up sacks. Dalton's been putting the ball in the air. We've seen him go to Heinz Field and just put up terrible stat lines. So I think that the arrival of Minkah Fitzpatrick, too, shores up the Steelers' defense in the slot and stuff, having him cover people. So I'm really worried about Tyler Boyd in this spot. I think you stack all your Steelers. I love the call on Connor. I think this is a massive bounce-back spot for him. I love Connor, Juju. I think that this could be the game that we see the Steelers have a very surprising output on offense.
I think so, too.
I know Vance McDonald is banged up, man, but I like Juju. I like Connor a lot in this spot. And if you're looking to jam in anybody else, I think Deontay Johnson, who saw a lot of the air yards last week, saw a lot of the targets. He's starting now. And look, Mason Rudolph, I know everybody wants to talk about all the narratives with James Washington and stuff like that, but Deontay Johnson's the starter. So if you look at somebody else to pair on the Steelers side, it's Johnson and not Washington.
Perfectly fair. So there you have it. That is our Week 4 slate breakdown. Really quickly, if we wanted to go through a cash game lineup over at FSM, I think certainly Mahomes, you start him up at the quarterback spot. Running back, somebody like Christian McCaffrey clearly in play, along with Austin Eckler. I don't know if you necessarily want to get too cute after that. Maybe you look at Alvin Kamara in the Sunday night matchup. I don't know if I can go with Dalvin Cook yet in cash, but I think probably McCaffrey and Eckler are the two guys that I really like as far as cash game plays. Wide receiver Keenan Allen, go ahead and lock button him in. I think same thing goes with DeAndre Hopkins this week. I know that you love Julio in that matchup. I think he's in play as well. Tight end spots. Kelsey always in play. Evan Ingram probably my cash game play there. And then when it comes to Superflex, I think Deshaun Watson is another great play. And then Russell Wilson would probably be my guys. And then run it back with the Patriots defense. Yeah,
and if you're looking to get weird, jam Kyler in there for a Superflex.
Yeah, I think Kyler, once again in play if you want to be able to have exposure to both sides. So you got a bunch of articles coming out later on this week. I think your 10 stats article is supposed to drop today over at the Quant Edge. What else can people find from you, whether it be on Twitter at Debro_FFB or over at thequantedge.com?
Yeah, 10 stats drops today, and then wide receiver cornerback matchups will be out on Friday. And yeah, man, I mean, I'm all the places, any of the places. A few podcast appearances this week, so check it out. Follow me on Twitter and wait for those to drop. But yeah, I mean, it's another good week, Benny. I mean, you got to love it. Living life, living football. And remember to use that promo code TQE for those of you watching on the video screen. It's $5 free at fantasysportsmarkets.com. So get $5 for yourself and then refer a friend and get $5 for each time a new friend signs up to $100. All you got to do is just send out a personalized code when you log in at fantasysportsmarkets.com. For Debro, I am Ben. Thank you guys for watching. Thank you guys for listening on the Fantasy Sports Markets podcast.